What's up, Hokie Nation? And welcome into a little Tech Sideline mini podcast, if you will. Got a treat today. Virginia Tech football unveiled its new uniforms for the 2024 campaign and beyond. And we have the OG Tech Sideline podcast crew on set to break it down. So let's introduce everybody. Across the way, welcome back, our founder and general manager, Mr. Will Stewart. To my right is our lead analyst and columnist, Chris Coleman. Behind the scenes is our director of media producing today, Mr. Nick Brown. And I am your host, Carter Hill. Will, first off, welcome back to the set. This is the first time you've been on since...
Gosh, I don't know. It's been a while. I did a podcast. I did one of my Founders Corner podcasts, and I don't remember what it was. I'm suddenly blanking on it.
Jake and Evan, maybe.
It may have been Jake and Evan.
You probably did one when I was in Europe.
Yeah.
Oh,
but I also did the one where I interviewed Andy. Andy and I went on like an hour and a half about how he got hired for the website and all that. So I think it's been that long.
Well, it has been a good offseason for Virginia Tech football. Kind of that hype continues. The new uniforms are released, and just to break it down a little bit, it's kind of the old school late 90s, early 2000s look with a little bit of a modern flair. So curious to kind of get y'all's overall reactions.
I think when I was reading through the comments in the article that Will posted, more people seem to like the maroon than the white. Some people were thinking about, the white stripe on the helmet. Maybe they could have done without. But I agree that I think the maroon look is a cleaner look. They're both clean, but I do like the maroon look better. It does have that 99 through 2003 vibes, which is my favorite Tech uniform of all time. So, yeah, I think they look good. I think they look very sharp. I'm one of those people that, whether it's evaluating uniforms or decorating your house, I need to see something before I know whether I like it or not. You can describe what my living room is going to look like, and I'm not going to know until I actually see it. So that it's made for some interesting decoration choices at times throughout the years. But it's the same way for uniforms for me. Like, I needed to see them before I know whether that I would like them or not, and I like them.
So to go back a little bit in the conversation, you referenced an article that we ran on the website yesterday. So if you haven't seen it, I took Hokies FB on Twitter has been putting out photos every day of the uniforms, and I picked 30 photos and put them into an update on the website so you can really see the two different colors, the white and the maroon, from all kinds of different angles, close up, far away. And at the bottom, we put a poll, and we'll talk about that here in a second, with just 5 choices ranging from number 1, you hate them, up to number 5, you love them. So if you haven't seen that, we'll drop the link down in the description. You can click that and go over and really look at the uniforms in detail. It's interesting to read the comments. As we'll get into in a second, the approval of these uniforms is very high, extremely high. But yet the comments are where you get the negative feedback.
Sure.
And I'm an easy guy to please. I like them. I look at them like, man, those things look good. They certainly look better than the most recent uniforms with the bib, or whatever you want to call it, the weird thing going on in the back. Now, I thought when those were, Virginia Tech wore those for 6 years, those uniforms. They were introduced before the 2018 season. And I always thought that the collar, the first thing that hit me about those uniforms is the collar was just too thick. It was too much. Then they had that weird thing going on in the back. So I wasn't a fan of those. And I really did not like the whole last generation of the Frank Beamer uniforms with the shoulder stripes and things like that. Not a fan of the shoulder stripes. I didn't realize until they put those stripes in that I didn't like the stripes. So these, I definitely like the look. It's a cleaner look. And like Chris, I'm reading through the comments and I'm like, wow, people really hate that stripe. The people that hate the stripe on the white helmet really hate the stripe on the white helmet. And the other thing that jumped out, Carter, and I think you're going to ask us about this later, is how many people don't like the Hokie stone effect on the numbers?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, referencing that poll that you all put out there on techsideline.com, 54% of people said that, quote, they're awesome. 40%, over 40% said they're really, really good. I think this is something that's not talked about enough, where oftentimes in off seasons for Virginia Tech football, not everything is always positive or universally liked, but this is something that I think just kind of more so buys into the hype in the offseason heading into 2024, and I think it just kind of comes at the perfect time too.
I think it's rare when you can get a fan base, any fan base of thousands of people, to pretty much unanimously agree on something. And with the exception of, let's see, we had
almost 1,500
almost
votes.
1,500 responders. Let me view results. We've had 1,477 total voters. Only 4 people voted they're terrible, and another 12 people voted I don't like them.
So good in today's day and age.
Right. So.
And with remember, this is a free article, and you never know if it's a UVA fan scrolling down to the bottom.
True.
Again. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, no, I love them. I love them. Well, I want to kind of pick apart the uniforms from top to bottom.
Right.
The other part, well, I guess I want to start with this because this is the one thing reading through those comments where most people picked apart. The Hokie stone numbering. I want to get you all's takeaways on that. What's your opinion on, again, this is an old school uniform, but the Hokie stone numbering is part of that modern look, so to say.
I think we're about to discover that I have no negative comments about these uniforms. So my thought on the Hokie stone is, Chris, do you remember the first time they did that? Was it the 2010 Boise game where
Did they have them in there?
I think,
remember I hate the Boise uniforms, so I block them out of
you
my
don't
mind.
look at them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I believe that those uniforms were black with orange numbers, and I think there was a Hokie stone effect to the orange numbers. So maybe Director of Media Nick can look that up while we're sitting here talking about it. But I've always liked that, and I think, or it may have been like there was a circuit board effect on those numbers. It was yeah. Nick says it was a circuit board effect on those numbers. I've always kind of liked a little something subtle in the numbers. I'm a fan of that, so gets a check plus for me.
I didn't like them when I first saw the still images of them.
Okay.
But then I saw the video images of drones and Strong out on the field moving, and you couldn't even tell they were there. So I'm not even sure you'll notice them in a game.
Yeah, I was going to say, Nick and I were talking about this the other day. I legitimately don't think you will notice that detail unless they zoom in while you're watching on TV.
Right.
Like, you're not going to see them in person.
I'd agree with that. I'm sitting here scrolling through the pictures, and the pictures that are furthest away are at the bottom of this set of pictures, and you can barely see it. I think we're all talking about it because a lot of the pictures were close-ups, and you can really see it. So this will be a deal where if you're watching on a 65-inch TV and they show somebody on the sidelines, you'll be able to see it. But you're right. I don't think it'll be a big thing just watching the game.
Something else that is not included, where people were concerned that it was going to be included, was there are no stripes on the shoulder pads, which is, again, what it looked like in the late 90s. And I think a lot of people were concerned about that because every single uniform, for the most part, Nike had released leading up to this had stripes. Do you like the no stripes look on the uniforms?
I do. I still call the 99 through 2003 uniforms the Vic uniforms.
Yeah.
And even after
and
that.
And the KJ uniforms. Seeing drones wearing number 25, I'm reminded
Yeah,
of
it kind of
KJ.
does remind you of KJ. And then even after that, the 2004 through 2007 uniforms, which I call the Brian Randall uniforms, because they first started wearing them because when he was a senior and they won the ACC, it didn't have stripes either. It had some little piping in through the front of the shoulders and things like that. But other than that, those uniforms are pretty similar, and that's what this uniform reminds me of. And I'm totally good without the stripes. Again, I think there's certain ways you can do stripes to make them look good. I'm sure Clark Rulin could draw up a really cool design with stripes on it and everything. But like I said, it's really tough for me to picture things. So I'm trying to picture this uniform with stripes on it. And I just don't think there's a need to do that because I think this uniform looks great without them.
So this is burying the lead a little bit, but somebody peripherally involved with the design process told me that the previous iteration of uniforms were a Nike template and that these were in-house. This is an in-house design. So I think they nailed it. And Chris, you brought up the 04 to 07 uniforms. And I think if you launched a uniform like that these days, you'd get a lot of division because there was a lot going on in those uniforms. There was with the piping and stuff like that. And then later they added the orange sleeves.
I call that the Marcus Vick alternate version.
Yes,
Yeah.
that Miami game.
Yeah.
It's funny, and I remember there being some division over those uniforms at the time, and I do think, like I said, if you launched it today, you'd get a lot of negative commentary on it. But I actually view those uniforms very favorably. And honestly, I can't separate if it's because they won a lot of games in those uniforms. I will tell you this. We got some pictures of Xavier Adebe. Xavier Adebe could wear that uniform. He looked phenomenal in that uniform.
I think one reason uniforms kind of look different these days, like when I first saw these uniforms, I wasn't completely blown away by them. But I was talking to these guys about it, and I think some of it is like they wear smaller shoulder pads these days.
Yeah.
So players don't look as cool as they used to in uniforms, which kind of makes the uniforms not look as good as they used to. But like you put Xavier DB and Vince Hall and Jake Housewright and Ben Taylor and good looking linebackers like that out there with neck braces and big shoulder pads. Of course, the uniforms are going to
absolutely.
Look better. Yeah, but they don't wear stuff like that these days. They don't need more knee pads these days.
You were talking about the stripes on the helmets earlier. So there is a stripe on the white. There's also, there's no stripe on the maroon. So kind of a similar look to the last couple of years. Do you like the stripe on the white, or would you just ditch the stripe as a whole? It kind of feels like for the last 7 to 8 years, Virginia Tech can't really decide whether or not they want the stripe or not on the helmets.
I can't make up my mind because it wasn't something I even thought about at all. And then people started, I hate the stripe. Get rid of the stripe. And I was like, So now I'm looking at it and I'm trying to picture what it would look like without the stripe. I just don't think it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Go.
Oh, sorry. I think, shoot, where'd my pictures go? I think the texture, not the texture, but the white helmet, when you zoom in on it, the new helmet designs where it's uneven. Right, I think that shows up more on a white helmet than it does if you zoom in like on a Tyron Jones maroon helmet. So I don't think maroon I think that maroon look just by the nature of the shade of the color is a cleaner look. It almost seems like the white uniform, you need something there to take your focus off how the lines of the actual helmets itself change. It's something that I would have to see before I knew whether I'd like it better.
I'll add this, to your point about maroon versus white. First of all, I think stripes on the maroon would look terrible.
Yes.
And I'm sitting here looking at one picture where Dorian Strong was the one wearing the white uniform. He's got his head down, and you can see on the top of the white helmet, it almost looks like a hatch that you can pop open.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would stand out and look really awful without a stripe.
True.
And nobody's talking about that. The stripe takes away from these black lines that you can otherwise see in the helmet, which are not prominent on the maroon. So I don't think the design team is getting enough credit for this, for looking at the maroon thinking it doesn't need a stripe, and looking at the white thinking, you gotta take away from all that busyness of the stock helmet by adding a stripe to it.
One of my favorite parts about the uniforms that a lot of people agree with on techsideline.com is the tech on the front bumper of the helmet. Now, I actually kind of like the VT that they had on there the last couple of years. They used to have grit on there a couple years back. Now it is tech. I like it, but I'm curious to get y'all's opinion on that as well.
So my grit hat somewhere.
Yeah, I got a grit shirt I wear every once in a while. I look good in it, if I must say so myself.
Yeah, I think that looks sharp. It's simple. I never liked the Big East when it was on there. That was just the Big East logo sucked, and that was just not the Big East logo was not good. Whenever Virginia Tech has tried to work in different things before, or are we doing a VT, or are we doing a tech?
Are we doing an ACC logo?
They always seem to experiment with stuff on their helmets. Right, which I never liked.
Nick, throw the camera on me for a second. You can see that they've had the ACC on the bumper before.
Yep.
So go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I don't think I realized that. Maybe they're just not proud of that affiliation anymore. I don't know, but that's a different conversation.
You never know how quickly that stuff can change.
I think they look fine. I'm not the type that generally pays attention to little details like that. I didn't know there was an ACC logo on the old helmets.
And the maroon helmet we've got sitting on the table has got the ACC logo on it. Yeah. So that was a thing. I don't know. I'm sure they put it up in 04. They were so excited to be in the ACC. I bet the 04 helmets.
And it says Virginia Tech on the back of that one, where it says Hokies on the back of the maroon one.
Yeah.
I think if I'm not mistaken, they had the old school ACC logo on the front when they first joined.
Yeah.
And then when it changed to the more modern logo, I believe before 2013, I want to say, maybe 2014, it was on there for the last couple of years of the Beamer era, and then when Fuente came in, it switched over to the grit. I
At
think,
some point, maybe not right away.
yes, exactly. I have a helmet in my basement right now that has the old school ACC on the front, but
This okay. Now these helmets, it says Hokies on the back.
okay.
At the back bottom.
Right. So Tech on the front, Hokies on the back.
This is important because, like, when opposing defenders are chasing down Kyron Drones this year and they're looking at the back of his helmet, you don't want them thinking, "Gosh, Virginia Tech really messed up the back of those helmets." but now they're going to be saying that's a good look. As he's trying to chase.
See,
down
that's a
drones.
red herring because nobody chases drones; they get run over by it.
Exactly. I still remember, speaking of quarterbacks running over people, when Logan Thomas ran over Miles Jack in the Sun Bowl in 2013.
He actually launched Miles
He
Jack.
did. He did.
Miles Jack flew
jacked.
through the air.
I think you all have a video posted on YouTube.
We
of
do.
that.
We do. You can find it on it way deep in our feed.
And was it
There's
like 5 plays later they did the same thing to Logan
He
and
got-
he got knocked out of the game?
Yeah.
And did his college career. Yeah, that was a tough one. And
Back on topic,
El
Carter.
Paso, Texas. I'm sorry, but you were talking about, this is where you were alluding to, we're starting to nitpick maybe a little bit, and I think this is the biggest nitpick is the Hokies on the pants. I think some people, according to your poll on TSL, some people would rather it say Tech than Hokies. I don't know if this is something that I really have an opinion on, but something worth talking about, I guess.
I don't have an opinion on it either, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. I could go either way. It's just not something that I think is to me it's more about the coloring and
Sure.
and whether they match, and it's just a sharp look that way than what it actually says, whether it says Hokies or Tech or whatever.
Yeah, it is a fairly large patch, and it is a patch. Now, Virginia Tech has had, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what year this was, they've had uniform pants in the past that had Hokies almost screen printed or printed on the white pants, much smaller, much more subtle. But yeah, I'm with Chris. That's not something I really think about.
Yeah.
You know, but so it's always interesting to see the design elements that people pick apart.
All right, so for now, it appears that we have a maroon and a white jersey. Would you in the future want to see something else, aka an orange? Or Chris, I know you'd love to see a black.
I'll be fine with it if they win wearing it.
Sure,
right?
yes.
Yeah. The reason I hate that boys uniform isn't because I think it looked bad. It's
It's a cool uniform.
It is.
It reminds me of one of the worst days in Virginia Tech history. I never want to remember that football game. And every time I go through a tailgating lot and see somebody wearing a black jersey, it reminds me of one of my
Also,
worst
the,
days.
The Tennessee game in Bristol, too.
Yeah.
Fumbled the ball 5 times in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were gray though.
True,
with
true,
black
yeah.
numbers, I think. But so regarding orange, there's going to be an orange effect game.
Yeah.
And so the question is, what is that going to look like? There have been orange effect games in the past where they just put on an orange helmet. I think you guys, before we started recording, we're talking about the 2015 Ohio State game in Lane Stadium. That was all maroon with the metallic orange helmet. So if they want to do the orange effect game, they can just put on the orange helmets, which I'm sure they still have around. So I'm not sure you're going to see an orange, even a partially orange uniform. I don't know.
Yeah, I think 2 years ago, Boston College was an orange effect game, right? And they didn't wear any orange at all in their uniforms, right? It doesn't have to be the team wearing orange. It's really, the effect games are about selling T-shirts. Let's just call it what it is.
And getting cool pictures of the stadium because everybody's wearing the same color.
Right. So I have never been a huge fan of orange uniforms. Maybe that goes all the way back to watching the 1994 UVA game when we had like 6 turnovers and lost. I don't know. I will say I did like them once. You can do an orange uniform that is a good look. I think it takes special. I think it takes a good designer. I don't think you can throw just any orange uniform out there and it's going to look good. The 2017 orange effect against UNC, I think those orange uniforms look really good. I might be slightly biased because Virginia Tech won the game 59-7.
Yeah.
But I thought they looked good. But if you do an orange uniform whenever, you get it right. Don't just say, "Oh, we're going to do an orange uniform for the sake of doing an orange uniform."
Sure.
Make sure you get it right. Now, and if it's done in-house, there's a better chance of it being done right.
Yeah, I would put forth the opinion that when it comes to orange, that stresses the designer more than white or maroon. It is difficult to get right.
I think eventually maybe you'll see an orange. I don't know. But I think terms of effect games, like you can have the orange effect and do it without, to Chris's point. I almost, like, to go off on a little bit of a tangent, would rather see with these new uniforms too, like maybe you ditch the white effect and you go back to the Hokie effect type of game, a stripe type of look, and wear the all maroons for a night game. Like that would be ideal, especially with these new uniforms.
I think that would be great. And plus, like, nobody does white effect like Penn State. So it seems like Lane Stadium's great. 66,000 people in white, I think, looks great, but it's not quite like 110,000 people in white on like a nationally broadcast Saturday night game. You know, it's like the whiteout is Penn State's thing.
Everybody else is playing for second place.
Everybody does something, but does a whiteout probably, but really it's Penn State. So let's do our own thing. And I do like the stripe thing. When did they first do that? The East Carolina game in 2016, I think. I thought.
Good question.
Great.
I don't know.
I think it was a 2016 East Carolina.
The one that, not that it was the first one, but the one that sticks out to me was the Notre Dame one.
Yeah, that was another good one too.
Because that was a night game. They wore the all maroons.
I think the East Carolina game was the first one in 2016, and I think that's why it stood out to me. Is because that was the first time they did. And I think that looked really, really awesome. Everybody remembers. I think they look a little bit cooler at night, but whenever we've done them at night, we've lost. So I kind of tend to remember the East Carolina game more.
You got Clemson lurking out there in October. You know, you gotta have a guaranteed sellout, not just a sellout, but a full stadium to do something like a stripe effect. So that's a candidate. We'll see.
Well, the release is here. We've seen the uniforms. What are you all's final thoughts as a whole?
I think they look sharp. There's a saying, look sharp, play sharp. That's not always the case, but I do think it's I think it's better to how do I put this? Somebody in the Hokie Club told me one time that whenever Virginia Tech loses, they get emails from people just complaining about everything. The music's too loud. We don't like your concessions. Water's too expensive.
The lines are too long.
Blah, blah, blah. He said whenever Virginia Tech wins, they get nothing. People's moods, they don't realize this, but people's moods, whether it's uniforms, whether it's stadium atmosphere or whatever, it's all about whether the team wins or loses. It influences your thought more than anything else. If the team loses wearing these uniforms, people are going to start to like them less, especially if they start to lose on the road, and those stripes are going to be a point of contention, right? But everything looks better. Everything tastes better. Everything smells better when you win.
Yeah.
Right? That's just something that affects all of your senses kind of in a subconscious way to a certain extent, probably. But if Tech has a good year, these are going to be great uniforms. If they have a bad year, we're going to be like, meh.
Yeah, so here at Tech Sideline, losses drive traffic and wins drive subscriptions is how we talk about it. I like the uniforms. I love them. This is not really relevant to whether or not we like them, but something that doesn't get talked about a lot is that, Chris played football when he was young. I played football when I was young. There's something about suiting up in a uniform and putting on what feels like armor to these guys. It's a very strong psychological thing. And I know it's not cool to compare football to war, but you're all suiting up in the same uniform, feels like armor. You're putting on the helmet and you're going down the tunnel to war with your buddies. There's this whole psychological effect that's very strong with the players. Now, how is that relevant? I don't know. They're going to look cool in recruiting photo shoots, but I just think that's underappreciated by fans is the gearing up that the players do and what that means to them.
Well, just to kind of tease this a little bit, I want to do this before we go. I know you obviously see kickoff coming up next week. What's coming up on techsideline.com?
I'm going to do a Q&A. I'm going to write it today and have it posted tomorrow. I'm going to the beach this weekend.
Nice.
And then
we'll get a recruiting commitment.
Yeah. Well, great. With Andy and David at the beach also, it means you'll have to write it up.
I'll have to write it up.
So you laugh, huh? But next week is ACC football kickoff in Charlotte, and all four of us will be down there for that. And we should have some content. And 5 of us. Nick's going too.
Now let me tease that a little bit. So we're going to get down there Sunday night. Monday is Jim Phillips talking. Tuesday, like this thing goes on 4 days now. They do
like
4 teams a day. So Virginia Tech is going to be on Tuesday. So we'll be down there Monday and Tuesday. And we actually have a spot on Radio Row, and Nick is going to do some fun audio video stuff on Radio Row. We hope with the players, and I'll just tease it as that. So we'll have the usual written content, but we might have some other fun stuff too.
Perfect. It's always a good time down there. Always a good time. Well, for Will Stewart, Chris Coleman, Nick Brown, I'm Carter Hill. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.